Voice for Good is a podcast where Elliot dives into the stories behind some of the world's leading entrepreneurs and how they are using their voice for good to influence industries. Voice for Good weaves narrative, as well as insights, into the journey of entrepreneurs, innovators, industry leaders, and the impact they are having while they are using their voice for good.
Welcome to another Voice for Good. We are in season 2, and this season has been about confidence. And having interviewed right now, as we speak, over 20 people, here's what I'm learning. I am learning so much, but I'm learning confidence is a very individual journey. Every single person I've spoken to, from, martial artists to people in the army to psychologists to neuroscientists to hypnotherapists to coaches to a various amount of people, is everybody has a different take of confidence. One interview we did, she asked on Facebook, what is confidence? And she got 100 different comments. So that will give you the understanding why this topic is so wide and we're going so deep this season, all about confidence. My name is Elliot Kay and I'm your host. I'm a 2-time best-selling author and I work with people to help them use speaking as a growth and marketing strategy, and of course a big part of that is confidence. And today my guest Jono, I've known for years. He's got a fascinating story, and with him we're going to skate around the river of confidence and find out his very own journey into confidence. Jono, welcome. How are you?
Hi Elliot, thank you for having me on the show.
You're very, very welcome. So, Jono, by the way, everybody listening, you should know by now, for the avid listeners, if you want to know about Jono, just read the bio. Jono, what is confidence?
Well, confidence for me is being able to stand in your own power. And also speaking your truth. Okay.
So what does it mean to stand in your own power? Does that mean flexing my fists and becoming like just come on, I'm powerful, and flexing my muscles? Like, you can't see me, but I'm actually flexing my muscles. That is so strange. But is that standing in your power?
Well, standing in your power everyone's got different definition. But for my definition and for me, standing in my own power is being able to speak my own truth, but also to be able to stand in my values, in what I stand for. So knowing what you stand for is one that I talk about a lot to my clients and people I work with. Is once you know what you stand for, your personal values,
yes,
you'll be able to express that in a way that aligns with everyone else.
Okay.
But how should I put this?
Go on.
Being able to express yourself truthfully,
yes,
and not hiding behind any stories or any things that don't align with you, anything that doesn't feel right when you're speaking.
So that's standing in your power. So standing in your power is the ability to express yourself regardless of, let's say, how people may react.
Yes.
And being true to your values and being true to your belief system. Is that about right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's correct.
And that too is confidence.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, because, right, we are living in very funny times. We've obviously, as we're recording this, we've got the handover or non-handover between Trump and Biden. We've just experienced Brexit. Last year we had the whole issue, obviously, with Black Lives Matter. We've had the hashtag Me Too movement kick off over the last few years. And do you feel that people in this day and age can confidently, truly express how they feel without fear of repercussion?
Yes.
You really believe that?
I believe that a lot of people are shifting towards more about standing in their own voice, in their representations, in their values, and what they truly believe in, which is why we see so many people rising up in these subject matters.
Okay, good. Well, that's a good thing, right?
I believe it's a good thing because everyone's starting to shift their consciousness into standing in their own power.
So if that's the case, I'm just wondering why equally there's such a big rise of mental health. And I know that's not your area necessarily, but why is there such a big rise in issues of mental health if we're getting more confident in expressing ourselves?
Because a lot of people don't know what they stand for and what they're expressing, whether they're reacting or either it's something they believe in.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, that's a whole different topic and a whole different podcast, right? So for you, what has been, have you ever grappled with confidence? Have you had personal challenges around confidence?
Absolutely. So for me, it goes back down to when I was a child, growing up in a all white English school.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only Chinese kid in the class or in the whole school,
Okay.
even. So therefore, I was a very easy target to be different.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really speak English as my first language. My other language was Cantonese, and I spoke Cantonese first.
Yeah.
So when it came to going to school, I didn't understand what people were talking about, what the teachers were talking about, what the kids were talking about.
How old
And
are you
therefore,
now? Or is that throughout your early years?
this was when I was about five.
So you were
probably.
born in China and you came
I was born
over.
in England,
Oh, you're born in England,
but I picked up Cantonese as my first language to speak and to
okay, got you.
listen, to communicate.
Got you. So you really weren't exposed to a lot of English in your early years, is that?
Mm.
Okay.
Like even like home cartoons and things that we watched when I was a kid, it
Yeah.
was all been Chinese.
Got it. Okay.
So I never had interaction with watching English cartoons and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It was all played in Chinese, so that was the first language I picked up.
I hear you.
So when it came to learning English, it was hard for me to communicate and interact with other kids and teachers. Then it caused people to pick up on that I was very shy. I didn't express myself a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I was easy to pick on because I wouldn't be able to express my feelings and what was going on to teachers.
Gotcha.
And so confidence for me, I never really had it when I was a kid, all the way to secondary school. It affected me a lot. I never really enjoyed going to school. I would always try to write letters or skip school or bunk school.
Okay. And how long did this last for?
It lasted till I was about 11 to 12. This is when my cousins said, oh, we're going to go do martial arts on Sundays.
Okay, interesting.
And so instead of learning Chinese on Sundays, at Chinese school on Sundays, me and my cousin decided to join the older cousins and friends to go learn martial arts.
Which martial arts was it?
This was Chinese kickboxing and kung fu.
Got it. Oh, kung fu. Yes. Love kung fu.
So and obviously once we start going to that for a year or two or so, many years after that, it grew my confidence and I was able to defend myself in secondary school.
Is that because you can kick some ass? Is that really like what it came down to? Like, hey, you made half of me, but I can punch your face in.
Well, it was because I was more disciplined, but also because they knew I studied martial art, that they didn't want to mess with me anymore.
Okay, got it.
And it came to a point when I did step up, right? In someone was trying to bully me and I just had enough and I fought back.
Yeah.
And that was when they said, oh, okay, you actually know how to defend yourself and
You're not
step up
weak.
for yourself.
We can't
And
pick
so-
on you anymore.
Yeah, so I no longer looked weak and I wasn't an easy target.
Got it. So you start martial arts and that gives you some confidence. Plus people stop picking on you because you can whoop their ass. And so tell me kind of from there, your kind of confidence journey.
Well, it still suffered. I mean, I had to voluntarily keep stepping up in my game in
Yep.
terms of, because I was very also shy and introverted and I was very into my IT and
Okay.
computers. So I was very behind the scenes type. I never really spoke to people. I was always behind the scenes. And even then, I didn't actually realize my confidence was that bad,
Yeah.
or as bad as it was, until I was speaking to people, making friends and, going out, and you start, networking and things like that, right? When you're growing up and realizing I have a few groups of people that I hang around with. And I was wondering why, and that came to the point where I was having difficulties speaking to new people.
Okay.
So I stepped up in terms of being a class rep in college. or the course representatives, where I handled the student issues between the student and the teachers.
Okay.
So I was able to collect and provide feedback to the college. And this went on to university. I also became the course rep for the year.
So you were purposely putting yourself in the situations where you always had to be front line and you had to continuously deal with almost two sides of things, right? So you're always kind of in the uncomfortable spot of having to mediate between grievances by the sound of things.
Yes, I was always a problem solver.
Uh-huh.
That's how I saw myself. And also putting in my uncomfortable situation, like you mentioned, was because I struggled so much with communicating with new people. I deliberately, purposely volunteered myself to become and do these roles. So I put myself more into these uncomfortable situations.
So what would you say from doing that you really learnt about kind of being confident, or how to increase your confidence? What would you say you were learnings from doing that if you look at it now?
Stepping into my leadership.
Stepping into your leadership. Okay. What else would you say you learned from it?
Stepping into my power.
Uh-huh. I guess you got comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes, that was it. And especially when I started a Chinese or British Chinese society at university, which was called the British Association of Chinese and British University Students.
Mm-hmm.
In short, it stands for Abacus.
Oh, yeah.
And this was a society that had involved the British Chinese students, as well as other foreign or English students that want to learn more about the Chinese culture. So
Okay.
I was building a bridge between cultures,
Okay.
and that helped me lead around 150 plus members on a yearly basis.
Okay. Got it. So if someone right now, let's say, is in a similar situation, maybe not at university, or maybe not, right now, we're talking right now in 2021, is in the situation where they're socially awkward, or they're shy, or, maybe even they're kind of being bullied slightly. Like, what would you, like, what are 3 things they could do to kind of counter that or overcome that, do you think?
Firstly is discovering what is it they stand for.
As a person. Okay.
What do they stand for? What's their values? What's important to them?
Yep.
What's their message that they want to show up for?
Okay.
Or be known for?
You see, I agree 100%. And you've been on a very strong personal development journey, right? And so that language is for you is second nature. But let's say, some of our listeners here, they might not have been on such a transformative journey, done a lot of personal development. What's another way we can say that says the same thing, but isn't kind of like personal development lingo? Like,
speak up and express yourself more.
So speak up and express yourself, right? But that in itself, I think, needs a bridge, right? Because I think intellectually, people get the concept. I need to speak up. I need to speak more. But when it comes to that moment where you're seeing your boss or your partner or your parents, right? Whatever, and you want to open your mouth, but inside you go, oh no, or it's going to lead to an argument, or I'm going to upset people, or That's kind of the barrier. That's the bit that stops people from speaking up. So how do you feel that people can overcome that kind of moment? So listen, John, I see you coming, and I'm going to tell you off. I'm going to fall out with you. That's what I'm saying in my mind, right? And then I see you. I'm like, oh no, look, I'm just not happy with you, Jono. Well, why is that? It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's me, right? Do you know what I mean? What can someone do to turn up the speak up dial?
To turn up and speak up and that dial.
No, the speak up dial, like a volume. Like how can people listening turn that up? Because intellectually people get it. I need to express myself. I need to speak up more. Do you feel there's one thing they can do? What? Practice in the mirror, rehearse what you're gonna say, Do you think that's all works?
This is I think this is down to avoiding conflict. Whether
Yes.
this is going to cause conflict.
Yes.
And in causing conflict, there's always different ways of communicating this, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So it's knowing what the problem is
Yes.
and what is it that you really want to address.
Yep.
You know, for arguments, it's just like, oh, you didn't wash up after you ate dinner or something like that.
Yeah.
Is
You lazy bastard.
Yeah, instead of communicating obviously more aggressive way, his things could say, maybe do suggestive communications like, would you be able to clean up after you've had dinner?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having abusive. I think this is the culture we've been brought up with, is just shouting abuse doesn't solve anything.
Right.
But
That's
most
true.
people seem to grow up with that, is that by shouting abuse that things and problems will get solved.
But do you think that's because people don't express themselves early enough, so it ends up being explosive and shouty?
I think it's because they haven't learned a communication style,
Or they're not
That
aware
suits-
of theirs?
or be aware of one that they have
Okay.
and discovered yet.
So
So it's finding their voice, of course.
Right. So it's finding their voice, knowing how to express it. And how important do you feel it is, the whole know your outcome? Like, I want to talk to Jono. But here's the outcome I want from the conversation. Do you think that plays a massive part in expressing yourself?
Well, of course, knowing the end result that you want, for any conversation, it's addressing the problem. What's the problem?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you know the end result that you want, then you should be able to communicate that more effectively. But there's also knowing what's the ideal situation for the conversation that we're having.
Right. Got it. So express yourself, speak up, right? Know your outcome is another thing. And what else do you feel people can do to kind of dial up their confidence, and if they were in your situation, so they can know their truth and they can express it?
Find what's uncomfortable for them
Uh-huh.
and go and do that. I mean, for me,
Yes.
a lot of it was down to being able to help others.
Okay.
I always loved helping others. Now, how else can I help others other than obviously the the digital stuff that I do, but also how can I physically help people and go out my own way and and do things for other people? Finding charity organizations to do volunteering work, more hands-on
Okay.
work. That helps you build confidence, but also helps serving others,
So
being able to help.
go on. Sorry, carry on.
Well, just being able to help others and serve, being able to serve others is a different feeling. I think that just gives you that joyous feeling to contribute to others in a way that you've helped someone else.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this, because there is a difference, because a lot of people please, right? So they do stuff for other people so they don't have to deal with their stuff. So they'll always, they'll lend money when they're broke. They'll go and cook for other people when they're hungry. Do you see what I mean? And there are a lot of people that's kind of a coping mechanism. And how do you know that the difference between I'm serving and it's coming from a good full place and it's from fulfillment versus it's avoidance and people pleasing? So some people, like, definitely when they volunteer, it's because they're people pleasing and actually they're quite hollow.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how one can tell the difference at all?
Being able to take responsible for your own areas of your life.
Uh-huh.
So like you say, if you are broke, don't lend people money if you're struggling yourself.
Yes.
If it puts you into a financial struggle, I believe there's a balance for that. Some people say you should, so then the more you give, the more you get back, right?
Yeah, that's what they say.
That's what they say, but I would, go strongly against that, because sometimes it just puts you in such mental stress that you won't be able to take care of yourself anymore.
Right, exactly. And you feel choked.
Yeah. So I'm very, aware of those kind of sayings and things like that. But being able to take care of yourself first before you take care of someone else.
Yeah, it's the whole mask on yourself first when we're allowed to fly,
Mm-hmm.
then the person next to you. So I guess in a way then, if you're coming from a place of service, there's not a need for gratification because you're doing it external gratification. I mean, because internally you're pleased, and it doesn't matter if someone says thank you for your service. It's nice, or if someone does something for you as a result. Because again, if you're doing to get, that's not coming from a place of fulfillment. That's not coming from a place of I confidently want to give back here. I confidently want to serve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in your experience, how can, because you obviously you did martial arts, and that helped you kind of physically as well as mentally, got you discipline. You put yourself in a lot of situations where you got comfortable with being uncomfortable. So would you recommend people go all out, get uncomfortable, or should they gradually build up to that?
Absolutely build up to it. I mean, there's the whole, throwing yourself into the fire and stuff like that. But depending on what you're comfortable with, some people are comfortable with just going all in.
Yeah.
But it's knowing what's comfortable, what's okay with you. If you do feel overwhelmed by jumping in 2 feet, then instead of doing 2 feet, do 1 feet first, and then do the one next, until you build up that confidence. It's not something that's overnight. Everyone handles it differently. But again, it's knowing yourself, knowing what's comfortable for you, knowing what's uncomfortable for you, and knowing what you'd be okay with being uncomfortable with. So, for instance, if I was to do public speaking, for instance,
Yeah.
and I know you, Elliot, for a long time.
Yeah.
When I first spoke out in public and doing my first talk, I was nervous as hell.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took up Toastmasters.
You see, that was your mistake.
And
taking up Toastmasters. No, I'm only joking.
And that's what helped me into public speaking.
Yeah. They're great, by the way. I was only joking to all the listeners. I was only joking. Toastmasters is great. Yeah.
As long as there's the building the uncomfortableness, and I wasn't comfortable with speaking in large group of people. So therefore, I put myself into situations where I got to speak with different people all the time. And it just happened, it doesn't have to be Toastmasters, but if there's a platform that gives you the opportunity to speak up and to talk about your experience and share your journey and grow that voice in you that you have, especially with coming to, doing podcast interviews like this.
Yeah.
I wasn't comfortable with doing interviews at first because it's very personal. It exposes a lot of vulnerability and a lot of issues that I've probably had previously.
Yeah.
But I learnt over time doing this and speaking up and just constantly throwing myself out there, being uncomfortable. I've been able to build myself up, and it's not an overnight thing.
Definitely not. Okay, good. So as we kind of wrap this up, right? So you've covered a lot of great stuff, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, knowing what you stand for, speaking your truth, knowing your outcome when you do approach certain tricky situations, learn what your communication style is, or learn a communication style when you want to express yourself. So what would be your kind of final words of wisdom to the listener of Voice for Good?
Voice for Good?
For the podcast, that's the name. What would be your words of wisdom for that?
Words of wisdom for everyone else.
Struggling for the wisdom there.
Well,
it's just a nice message. That's all.
I would say. I know this is one that kind of resonates with me a lot. Is be so good at what you do that you can't be ignored.
I love that.
And that's one that sat with me for a while, and I've heard a lot of other friends and speakers say the same thing, and that's something that really resonates with me. Is because I've never really been good at anything, really, for my whole life. Like I really struggled with that. And I feel but when you are so good at what you do, people would just know about it, people will hear about it, and people can't ignore you.
Okay.
And that's just part of just, I suppose, being invisible when I was a child, and now being able to do what I do and help others. I've been able to be recognized and seen to be good at what I do. So be good at what you be so good at what you do that you can't be ignored.
I love that. So get really good at what you do so people can't ignore you. I love that. And the other one, of course, is add so much value that you're irreplaceable. I guess is another extension to that. So I think it's a great message. I think it's a great message to end on. So Jono, if people want to connect with you, if they want to find out more about you, they resonated with your story, how do people get in touch?
Well, if they type my name, Jono Poon, on Google, I'll show up on my website, on my social media, so you can connect with me anywhere. I'm freely happy to connect.
And besides, helping, sharing your journey with confidence, do you want to tell people quickly what is it you do besides that?
I help people with digital transformation and strategy, in helping people build a powerful online presence that stands out, and we monetize it.
Sounds good to me and warrants a lot of confidence. So thank you a lot for that. So to everybody listening today, as you're hearing, everybody's got their own grapple, their own journey with confidence, whatever standing in your power and being able to speak your truth means to you, step into that step by step. Take your time, but get there, because the world needs to hear what you have to say, and the world needs to hear your truth. It might be uncomfortable for some people to listen to, but the fact if it's real to you and you express it from a place of what you stand for and your place of values and your place of supporting beliefs, then that is your truth, and people either take it or leave it. I believe it's Marilyn Monroe that said, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. Always remember that. So this is an end of another episode from me, Elliot Kay, your host. If you want to find out where you stand with your confidence and speaking and the different aspects of speaking, go to the website, speakerexpress.co.uk, click on the quiz and find out for yourself, because we have an assessment tool for that. Otherwise, till the next episode, be seen, be heard, and always use your voice for good. Bye-bye now.
You have been listening to Voice for Good with Elliot Kay. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on Instagram and on YouTube. This has been a Speaker Express podcast production. Remember to be seen, be heard, and always use your voice for good.